So hello everyone. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is just outlining my general thoughts on the reverse diet debate. If you guys haven't seen it yet, I'll put a link right here somewhere so you guys can check that out. Overall, I see the reverse diet debate in a positive light. I know that some of you guys wanted maybe a little bit more of like a flame war than we ended up seeing. But of course, going in, all that I can do is go on what has been released publicly and said to me. And if I had to be completely honest, I did expect a little bit more disagreement between the parties. But I don't see that as a bad thing that it didn't happen. I actually see it as a good thing. I think it's good that the people with the biggest spheres of influence as coaches in our community are converging with their opinion rather than diverging. So in terms of the actual nitty-gritty of the debate, I think we can walk away with, as I see it, two main pragmatic points. And the first one is that it's smart to increase your calories just generally in the off season. And I think that there are two main reasons for this. The first is that it's probably going to allow you to perform better in the gym and as a result build more muscle. And then also it might, or there's at least a chance, that it could allow you to diet on higher calories the next time you cut, especially perhaps towards the beginning of the cut. But that isn't really how I wanted to set up the debate. That was just a takeaway that sort of came as a result of the conversation. I think the main takeaway is that it really doesn't make sense to gradually bring your way back up to maintenance after a cut. I think that the idea of doing that slowly and not just jumping back to maintenance, that is your new maintenance, right away, just makes no sense. Because even if you're extremely apprehensive about gaining fat, if you just go back to your new maintenance, then you're not going to be gaining fat anyway by definition. So what you actually end up seeing in cases where you have people boasting about actually losing weight as they reverse is that these people are just still in a caloric deficit, so they haven't yet reached their new maintenance. And that, of course, I think shouldn't be the goal of the post-contest period unless you have another show or a series of shows lined up. I think if someone has psychological reasons for not wanting to go straight back to maintenance, then that's an issue that should probably be handled by a specialist or a professional who deals with those sort of issues specifically. Because as coaches, I think the best thing that we can do is encourage people that gaining fat is a necessary process in terms of making progress from show to show. And actually actively encourage our athletes to not be afraid to gain a little bit of fat. If someone is fearful of adding food to the point that they can't jump to their new maintenance, then that's an issue that I think should be nipped in the bud rather than feeding into that and saying, well, they're not comfortable with more increases, so we should go slowly. So that's the lowest that I would do. The lowest that I would recommend is going straight back to maintenance. But I don't actually think that this is the best advice to give to competitors, and there are a few reasons for that. The first one is that going to maintenance is actually not that much of a bump. And throughout the course of the debate, I asked this a couple of times in a couple of different ways, and I don't think I really got a good answer, at least not one that I was satisfied with from the other side, as to why we should spend a couple weeks in this sort of buffer zone where you're just at maintenance but not yet in a surplus. The only reasons that I could sort of think of were it would serve as sort of like a litmus test to be sure exactly where their maintenance is, because it's kind of tough to know how big of a deficit someone is actually in, especially as they reach the tail end of their contest prep diet. So by putting them back up to maintenance, it's a little bit more conservative. You'll ensure that you won't get them in a surplus too fast, and then you can add in calories from there. But I think that this is needlessly conservative. I think that you can just put someone straight away into a surplus. And there was a video that was released the exact same day as the debate by 3DMJ. I think it was called the Recovery Diet. What they recommend in the video is actually going right into a 400 to 1,000 calorie surplus. And I actually think that this is a great recommendation. If the goal is to gain fat, then you should start doing that sooner rather than later. But to my first point, I think that what some people aren't recognizing is just how similar new maintenance calories feels to dieting calories. So let's just say, for example, you finish out your contest prep on 1,600 calories and we bump you right back up to maintenance. Let's say it's 2,000 calories. If you're quite a bit below your set point and have been, or settling point, and have been for some time, then 2,000 calories isn't gonna feel a whole lot better than 1,600 calories. You're still gonna be very food focused, you're still gonna be tempted to binge, you probably still will binge, and I don't think that the differences in adherence from, say, a very slow reverse, I do think that going straight to 2,000 is better, but I think that going straight to 2,400 would be better still, or going straight to 3,000, their old maintenance, would be better still. And so for all that, I do think that probably the best way to recommend this generally is just by setting a weight cap for people. So let's say within the first 4 months of your post-contest period, you shouldn't try to go more than 10% over your stage weight. And I think that as long as the athlete is comfortable in gaining fat, how quickly you get to that endpoint shouldn't matter so much, provided that you don't exceed it. Now the argument against, or I think the best argument against gaining fat really quickly, like say adding that 15 pounds in 1 or 2 weeks, is that the only way you can add that quickly is if you're binging. And if you're binging, then you're likely out of control and more likely to overshoot. And that certainly is a possibility. You know, if you just tell someone that you have a weight cap of 165 pounds, don't exceed it, inexperienced competitors especially might struggle in staying under that without further control. However, I think that it's also a possibility if you're tracking. You know, people could still be breaking the diet, they could still be cheating on their macros and going over and binging on the side, which happens all the time. And what ends up happening in that case, which is extremely common in my experience, is you have this constant internal dialogue of, oh, I've already eaten this many macros, I can't eat this much more. Or, you know, there's this dinner plan that my family planned for me after the show and I've already got my daily macros almost filled up. And you don't have that flexibility that you would have if you just said, okay, you know what, I'm still 3 pounds under my weight cap. If I go out and eat this meal and blow my macros for the day, that's not a big deal. And for this reason, especially immediately post-show, when I find a lot of people have these sort of friend and family engagements because you've been dieting for so long, that now people expect the constraints to be lifted. I think that it would be smart to simply lift those constraints in terms of tracking constraints, at least for a little while. And so what I do to put some constraints on the athletes so that they don't just completely go off the rails, is say that you should focus on eating solid square meals. So they can be big meals and you don't have to put any limits on yourself, other than the fact that, you know, once you're done the meal and you decide, you know what, this is enough, I feel full, then you don't just keep on eating. You should really try, like actually try, to eat for physiological reasons rather than emotional reasons. And really just, you know, pay attention to that and actually take it seriously. And then I also always set a protein requirement. I encourage, you know, people to eat 25 to say 40 grams of protein at each meal. So I think that setting up some sort of macronutrient guideline with increased flexibility, so say track just calories and protein with a fiber requirement, in a decent surplus off the bat for most people, and also having some kind of weight cap. Or if you feel as though when you're tracking, you're restricting yourself and you've got this internal dialogue going, then I think that a second option of paying attention to what you're eating discrete meals, allowing the body fat to come on, and then once you get to that weight cap, then at that point you can start tracking a little bit more closely. And then furthermore, I think that there are active things that you can do to prevent this overshoot when using this approach. One would be writing your goals down and reviewing them every morning. The other thing that I found to be helpful is going on morning walks. So I think it's a good idea to reduce your cardio, but I wouldn't view the morning walk as a cardio session, but rather just a way to sort of get outdoors, get your day started on the right foot, and sort of remind yourself and plan out your day on the walk. Another thing that I did that I found to be helpful was I made a motivational calendar. So Robin and I put some photos of people that inspire us on the calendar, and then we would give ourselves a check mark as the days went by if we did a good job. A good job just meant that, you know, we didn't eat all day long, we stuck to discrete meals, and we were more or less good at, you know, stopping once we were full. And then just the last thing that I would say about that is to be forgiving of yourself if you do binge. I know that binging is held in a really, really harsh light, and a lot of people seem to put it in the same company as like committing like a moral atrocity or something. But I don't think you should feel super bad if you do binge on the diet. I personally don't know of any bodybuilder who hasn't binged at some point after their contest prep. You're gonna get back to a more comfortable body weight, and these signals won't be as strong to just eat and eat and eat, and things will normalize over time. And if it gets to the point where it's out of control, then I think that it's now an issue that should be tended to in a professional manner from someone who's actually a specialist in that area. So then the second argument that I hear against regaining the fat quickly or using more of an intuitive approach is that you want the muscle gain and the fat gain to happen at roughly the same pace. All right, so if we look at it graphically like this, we can put the fat gained, the muscle gained, on the y-axis, and then the x-axis will be time. So if we do things, say my way, we can allow the body fat to come on quite quickly, and then once you reach your weight cap, you would just put constraints on yourself to ensure that you don't go any higher than that. Or we can add the fat progressively and more slowly, so that it better matches the rate of muscle gain, so you don't have a period where the fat is way ahead of the muscle. So let's just take this point here at say 2 weeks where your body fat has gone way up, but your muscle has only gone up a little bit. You're going to look less lean at this body weight, let's just say it's 165 pounds, than you did say before you started your contest prep. Because not only did you lose fat throughout the course of your contest prep, you also lost muscle. And now you're at a point where you've put all that fat back on, but you haven't put very much of the muscle back on yet at all. Now, the pros of this approach is that you only have a fairly small amount of time where you're basically feeling like garbage. Because you've restored your body weight, you're probably feeling, you know, your hunger levels are getting back to normal and your hormones have re-equilibrated to some degree. Whereas if you take the slower and steadier approach, you have a whole lot of time where you're feeling crappy. And I think that the important point is that, say 6 months or 3 months down the road, both approaches have you end up in the same place. So really it depends on what rate you're comfortable gaining at. If you're comfortable gaining faster, then you just have to put up with the fact that there's going to be a period of time where you're looking a little bit fluffier. And then on the other hand, if you don't want to do that and you do want to maintain some resemblance of what you just spent the last 4 or 5 months working towards, then you can of course take a slower and steadier approach. But I think that the most important takeaway from all of this is that it should be primarily the personal preferences and comfortability of the athlete in terms of how fast they're willing or comfortable gaining body fat that should be dictating how fast the rate of gain progresses. So guys, that is pretty much my final summary on the reverse diet debate and reverse dieting generally. I hope that you guys enjoyed the back training clips that covered this video. That was a back workout I did earlier today. And if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.